And welcome to this episode of the podcast, where I am delighted to be joined by Professor Willy Bolander from Florida State University. Willy, hi.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. Good to see you. And I can see you because we're recording this on Zoom. But for people who might be listening, I've got to say, your background is so cool with your guitars hung up and stuff like that. You know, if anybody's thinking because you're a professor, it's all kind of Dumbledore and wood panels and things, it could not be further from the truth.
No, well, I'm not to the wood panels level yet. You need about 40 years in before they start giving you wood panels for your office.
Is that your
No, yeah, no,
aspiration?
I've got my skeleton posters, my guitars, some. Oh, I think back there you can see a collectible bottle of Iron Maiden beer. Just normal professor stuff.
Iron Maiden bit. Is that Trooper?
It is, yeah,
Oh, wow. You know what, Fred, behave. We've got to stay on track here. This could easily go down a completely different route if I'm not careful.
absolutely.
but let's come back to that. So you're a professor in sales. How
That's
do
right.
you get to that position? You know, what did you do to achieve that?
Well, strange start. I was as you might be inferring from my background, I was playing music and horsing around in my early adulthood, and just kind of stumbled into a sales job. I called this ad that said make $8 to $60 an hour doing easy work, and I left this smart aleck message on their voicemail saying, "Hey, I'm interested in making $8 to $60 an hour doing easy work. I think it's something I'm going to be really cut out for. Give me a call." And they called me back a few hours later, and then I was in sales somehow. It just happened because I was being a smart aleck on a voicemail, and it really started opening my eyes to the possibilities. That you can create something that didn't exist, or you can spur something to happen that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't woken up and done those particular sets of actions that day. And it became very fascinating for me. So I'd gone to college several times and dropped out, because schools for suckers, you know, you've heard that. And
I did four
got
years.
got kind of depressed and dropped out. I forget, it was two or three times. It was definitely two. You could count a three if you count the time I enrolled and then never even showed up once. But I don't count that one. You got to at least come to class once. And I didn't have any reason to really be doing it. And I found myself moving and living in a bigger city and finding out that people actually cared if you had a degree. And, I was having opportunities come before me, and they said, yeah, well, we like you. We like the way you talk. We like the way you think. But, we have this little box on our paperwork that says you need a degree. So
Yeah.
sorry. And I think the first time I heard it, I was quite condescending in my mind toward really a college degree. Come on, grow up. And then I heard it about 50 more times and realized, oh, maybe this is feedback for me to change my perspective on this topic. But then, so I'd been selling for maybe 5, 6 years at that point, insurance at first, and then accounting services. And I said, okay, if I'm going to go back to school, I'm just going to go back to school until I'm done. And at first I thought that might be, finish my undergrad and then do an MBA, maybe do law school, something like that. And I had maybe what you might describe as a more Dumbledore type professor, big messy hair, clothes that didn't ever make sense, a professor. And he just said, well, why don't you think about doing a PhD? And I said, I don't know. I don't know anything about it. They don't, big business magazines don't publish top list of PhD programs. They publish top list of MBA programs, right? And he told me a bunch of crazy, wild-eyed things that I think they were true for him. I don't think they're true by and large, but they got me looking. And the more I got into it, the more I realized, I kind of like the idea of tackling tough questions. I mean, I teach classes, but the vast majority of what I do, of what I'm responsible for, is conducting and publishing research, which is kind of more interesting than I think it sounds to people when they hear it, right? I mean, you're addressing a problem of interest. You're trying to figure out how to improve salespeople's performance, how to get them to ramp up their performance more quickly, how to keep them motivated, how to reduce turnover, all of these things, pretty important outcomes, and questions that, despite being pervasive problems in the business world, we still don't have answers to. So, or not robust answers to. So yeah, it just kind of happened. And I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. And uh, my route into the PhD program was really just by talking to connections there and then having them kind of point me to Houston, where I did grad school. And it all just sort of started unfolding in a very natural, nothing was forced. Um, it just kind of happened, I guess.
Oh,
And now there was a time, I will say, there was a time that I was about to, I was very seriously considering not finishing, not going to grad school, and just taking a job as like a financial advisor type salesperson. I knew a few people doing it. I knew you could make good money. I knew that, you were legitimately helping people. It wasn't one of those jobs where, if you turn it upside down and look at it in a way that no one would ever look at it, it's kind of like you're helping people. So no, actually helping people save money is legitimately helping people. You don't have to rationalize that. And I knew I had three criteria. I knew I wanted to make a good amount of money. I knew I wanted to legitimately help people. And I knew that I wanted to do things my way. And that turned out to be, which was a surprise to me, that turned out to be kind of my biggest motivator. And I think what helps me really enjoy the professor role, in that I don't exactly have a boss. I have a department head, but he tells me when my classes will be. But that's about it. That's about all he does. It's sort of an authority figure. I mean, he checks in on me. He tries to do things to help me stay productive. But if I'm productive, he leaves me alone completely. And if I remember having a conversation with the recruiter for the financial company and saying, what if I want to take a week off? So, that's fine. You can, coordinate with an assistant or do this. And, yeah, you can do that. So, well, what if I want to take like 2 or 3 weeks off? I said, well, it'd be a little bit harder because, your customers will need to, your clients will need to get a hold of you and all of these things. Okay. Well, so what if I want to take like 3 months off? I said, well, no, there'd be no way to do that. You've got a business to run. I said, yeah, it makes sense. I don't, I don't dispute your answer. I think your answer is the right answer, but I don't know that it's the right answer for me. Um, I don't know why. I've never taken, I mean, I can't go more than 3 or 4 days without working. Certainly not. I think I maybe have done a week, forced, reluctantly, dragging, dragging myself into it. But I'm never going to take 3 months off. But it's important for me, I guess, psychologically, that it's because I choose not to do that, not because somebody else is telling me, no, you can't do that. I just have this nagging thing in my head that says life's pretty short. How much of that time do you want to be people bossing you around? And the answer is not very much of that. Now, ironically, you go into a PhD program and everybody bosses you around and tells you you're an idiot, and every thought you have is incomplete and everything's wrong. But I could kind of I think of it as an indentured servant sort of model, and that made sense to me. Okay, I'll give up my autonomy for 5, 10, 15 years while I finish my degree, while I earn tenure and all of that, because, there's going to be a lot of years on the back end of that where I don't have to answer to anyone about anything, which is kind of nice. And I don't think I'm a horrible person out to do horrible things, behind this curtain of tenure, but yeah, it's just good to not have that kind of those eyes staring at you at all times, or that axe. I've often thought of it like an axe swinging right above your neck. It's like, yeah, you're perfectly safe unless you step out of line 1 centimeter, and then you're perfectly dead.
we're back to Iron Maiden. That's so interesting. I love that idea of just, yeah, but what if I want 3 months? But you don't really. You just wanted to see how far you could push it. I think that's great.
Yeah, I want the option on the table. And right now, what's great about this career is I could step off of every project I have if I decide that something is, something needs to be redirected, that I need to do something different with my energy. I can do that. I can start new projects. I can walk away from everything I have. I can, yeah, it's just the options, that every day when you wake up, the thing you do is the thing you chose to do. It's a pretty motivating, compelling thing, at least for me.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? The classic purpose, mastery, and autonomy, isn't it? That you've got those. You sorted it. Fair play. So just again, before we go into the PQ stuff, if you could very briefly just talk about when you're teaching sales, kind of how does that work? Because there'll be people listening, I suspect in UK, who are just like, well, sales training, teaching it at university, they'll get training,
Mm.
but teaching sales at university, I don't know what goes on. How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a similar sentiment maybe even just 20 years ago in the United States, where it was really only a handful of schools kind of pushing for this. But I think it started largely with the realization that, especially in a business school, you're probably looking at least 50% of those people taking their first job in sales. If you're focused more on like a marketing major, that number, according to some estimates, jumps up to like 80%. So you've got a career that the majority, or perhaps the vast majority, depending on how you count them, of your graduates are going to go into, and you don't say one word of it to them. To the word sales is just a column on, from their accounting class. They don't know what has to happen to make that column a positive number. And that is an obvious mismatch. I mean, if you have a medical school and you find out that 99% of your graduates go on to be doctors, but you don't teach them how to do medicine, you're in trouble. So how we teach it, well, there's typically three most, you can have more than three, but most schools that kind of follow in this sort of pattern have at least three classes. And the first one is just an introduction to sales class. It's not as much about the behavior of selling. It's not so much about what you do when you're in front of the buyer. It's more of an overview. What is sales? What types of roles are sales roles? Some of you have parents that have worked in sales your entire life, but they've never said they work in sales. They've told you they work in account management or business development or all of these other words, and saying, okay, well, that's just a way to say sales that makes people think that they're not, that they're better or different than a used car salesman or something like that. And a lot of what goes on there is just kind of selling them on the idea, just kind of opening up their eyes to what selling really is, right? And you get these kids that come in and say, well, I don't like pushing people around, and I don't like being a bully, and I don't like being a fast talker that tries to trick people into compliance by their charisma alone. I say, well, yeah, I don't like that either. Is that's not what we're teaching here in the College of Business at over 100 universities, at least in the US now. And you sort of come into agreement with them that, yeah, totally. I agree with you. Oh, you had a bad experience at a big box electronics store. You had a bad experience with an insurance guy. Yeah, let's air our grievances. Let's come into agreement that when we're talking about selling, or more generally influence and persuasion, and we're talking about these things, there's a right and a wrong way to apply these. And you get these kids that say, yeah, I don't like any of that, and I never thought I'd go into sales, but as the semester progresses and I start to realize, oh, it's about meeting customer needs and solving customer problems. It's about developing solutions that never existed before to help a business customer, operate more efficiently, and adding value. I mean, the concept of adding value is alone pretty powerful. And you just see that. So that whole first course is just, kind of level setting for these students that don't realize how many people they know in sales, don't realize that maybe some of the volunteer work that they do for their fraternity or their sorority has been sales, fundraising and finding sponsors for these events. And you just sort of see these dots connect for them. And, certainly not everyone decides, oh yeah, I want to go into sales, but a good portion of them give it serious consideration. And I think, in a sense, you can think of that first class as kind of selling them on sales, level setting, and then getting them to say, well, maybe that's not so bad. I like being outside and going and visiting people and interacting with different people. Now that I know I don't have to be a jerk, that really opens things up for me. Second class would be an advanced sales course, which is very much everything that I just said the first course was not, right? So this is, you're in front of the customer, you're in a conversation. How do you question? How do you probe? How do you tell when somebody, makes one of those statements that isn't quite clear, and there's a little story behind it, and learning to recognize those and say, well, you mentioned that, something about your weekends. What did you mean by that? Give them say, oh yeah, well, I'm spending way too much time on this and it's taking up my family time. Okay, well, great. Now you've just learned something that that you didn't know before, and that your competitors, if they were not as skilled as you, would have just glossed over and, jumped into a product presentation. The third course is a sales management course, which covers all of the things about management of salespeople. So there's a general 3-course sequence. And I think that was a lot of details, but moving back, stepping up a few levels here, we don't talk about a product. And I think that's kind of critical to why we're able to be successful. I say we don't talk about it. We talk about various products later on in the process, but when we start, we're talking about influencing decisions, not influencing decisions to buy a particular brand of payroll services, not influencing decisions to buy a specific piece of technology. We're talking about influencing decisions. So it is a effective model for selling that we teach them. They know how to sell, but they don't know the product. And when a company comes and recruits them, they get, kind of one of the value propositions to them is just teach them about your product. They already know how to ask questions. They already know how to listen. They already know how to, hold their head up and pull their shoulders back and, look confident. And, we put them through this, and they've done, they'll do role plays and, sometimes into the triple digits in a semester if they're really out of their minds, with different products. And they go do competitions that we have here with different products. And the idea is just to get them to understand that the process of influence, persuasion, getting people to, consider your words when making decisions is somewhat a generalizable process. Now you'll refine it when you start your job. You'll find out, okay, with this product and with these types of customers, I don't need to ask as many implication questions, because they're further in their decision process. They know what they need or why they need it, right? Or these types of customers, I'm in medical devices, and the doctors won't ever give me an hour and a half to have this big long discussion. So I have to break it up into little, couple of minute pieces over the course of many months to have this whole conversation with them. And, so there's implementation changes to that model, but the model largely stays the same.
It's just fascinating. I'm so tempted to say, let's just carry on talking about educating sales, but at university. But I want to take it down the route of, and I don't know, it's just so, for me, it just sounded like the first one is saying, the first course is like, it's not, shiny suit day, lying without moving your eyes day, whatever. It's that this is a genuine, proper profession that's valuable in what it does. The advanced sales sounds a little bit more like what we would do on commercial sales training.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Except embarrassingly for professional salespeople at a far, far higher level, with a far more. I mean, you're saying they're doing double-digit, triple-digit role plays, and they're doing competitions, and they're pushing and changing and breaking stuff down. But people whose job it is aren't necessarily doing that, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, and there's, when I do trainings, which depending on the year, I'll do several or none. But, there very often the company will ask, hey, can you design these role play exercises to be around our product? And while not wanting to turn any paying client away unnecessarily, a little gentle pushback and say, look, if you insist on us doing that, we can do it. But we want you to understand that when we do this in context, when we do this with the product that they're used to selling, we can explain the questioning process. We can we can give them a test or a quiz, and they'll answer all the questions correctly. They will understand it cognitively, and we'll put them into a role play exercise. And because it's a little bit too familiar to them, they will do exactly what they've done, every sales interaction before the training. And it's kind of a shocking result after, you spend days talking about this new sales method and the importance of asking questions, and you say, okay, so go sell the product you're used to, and they sit down and maybe ask 2 questions and then go into a product pitch, and you're going, have none of you been paying attention? Well, no, they have been paying attention, but you gave them something that was a little bit too close to home and a little bit too easy for them to fall into their general habits.
Yeah, straight into comfort zone, straight into, oh, I know that bit, and particularly because you feel a bit under pressure in that environment. Oh, let's grab onto something that I know.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. So let's imagine then we've got a bunch of students, and we are going to be taking through PQ, concepts of partner intelligence, because we know that if you get your head around these, it's going to help your overall sales approach. Now, you might look at it, it's fairly advanced, but I might come back and say, actually, no, this is introduction sales stuff, because this is going to help your ethos. So let's sort of break these down and think about some of the things that we could do, or you could do, as we introduce them to well, salespeople, sales students. It doesn't really matter too much. And so let's start off with that ability to trust then, or trust as a concept. What sort of things can we do to get that on the agenda and get people thinking about that?
Often when we talk about trust, we'll try to, and I don't know if I'm, for all I know, I'm echoing everything you would say. So if I am, I apologize, but
that'll be great. I'll carry the recording around with me.
Perfect.
Professor Willy says, so I can't be wrong.
Yeah, couldn't possibly be wrong. No, there's, we often discuss a few different dimensions of that, right? That part of it is being, this type of authentic person where there's kind of this emotional trust or this, like I want to trust you. You seem like a trustworthy person. You seem honest. You seem sincere. But there's this other dimension that, is often been called competence, right? So you have this maybe conscientious element of it, right? You are a person who can be trusted. But then you have this competence element that says, are you actually competent to do the things you say you can do? You're a nice person. You listen. You gave me all these signals that say emotionally I should be able to trust you. But, are you not smart enough to pull this off? Are you not experienced enough to pull this off? And I think the way you sort of engender those two things are very different, right? I mean, one on the emotional level comes from very teachable, trainable things that, I think you can do in a week seminar, or you can do make a lot of progress on those things. Or, are you listening more than you're talking? Are you asking questions more than you're making statements? Are you taking notes and then using the buyer's words back to them, right? This all communicates some sort of conscientiousness, right? I'm empathetic and I'm listening to what you have to say. But the other one is maybe a little bit trickier, right? I mean, do you actually have the product knowledge? And we all, we kind of illustrated in the what I said earlier about the sales courses, but we tend to push away the product, right? Because historically it's the opposite has been what's happened, right? That it's all product and then 2 hours of how to pitch it, And we said, well, let's flip that. But this type of the competence that leads to trust is going to come from your product knowledge, and not just the knowledge of your product, but the knowledge of your competitor's product, right? That when when the prospect says something, you can say, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let's put it in these parameters. Let me show you how, the starting ticket price might be more, but the ongoing price, as long as you're using this over the course of at least 6 or more months, it'll pay for itself. And, that you're able to have kind of a complex discussion. Some might even call that analytic ability, right? That you're able to sort of take these disparate pieces of information, right? The customer said this. I know that my competitors who are talking to them are going to offer this. So if I really want to differentiate in a compelling way, I can maybe take this information that I learned because I asked really great questions that maybe my competitors don't get, and take this element of my solution that my competitors don't offer. And that's how I can really make a compelling, differentiated sort of appeal. But it is interesting to think, and I mean, maybe especially for the 20 somethings that I get in my classroom, that, sometimes they think it's all about being a nice guy, and it's good to be a nice guy. That's a part of it. But, we start talking about complex sales, and I'll start drawing this picture of, okay, here are the people in your organization. Here's you, and here's some people. Every now and then you need to tap Bill over in finance, and Jimbo over here in logistics, delivery over in the warehouse, whatever. And you need to be able to interface with these people to get the solution, the right solution at the right time, and all this for these prospects. But then you've got this prospect company, and it turns out, there's not really one person that makes this decision. You've got Matt and Fred and Francine and all these people, and they have different roles, and you start drawing this map out and they say, well, but wait, then there's there's a couple of competitors you have to deal with, and we'll name some of them. This guy. Oh, there's a couple partners that you work with though that feed you leads, or they help with the installation of your giant machine whenever you sell it, right? And you start drawing all these linkages. And the analogy I use is, at this point, you should start to realize that this looks almost more like a project management job. You've got all these people, you need them to be doing sometimes different things, sometimes the same thing, but they all have unique individual motivations, unique individual needs. And your job is to manage that, and if you're expecting to be the backslapping insurance salesman who, which I say with a little bit of cynicism and a little bit of endearment, because those are some of the guys I started with. Yeah. And there's a lot that I like about those guys, but they're going to be good at selling certain types of products and not great at selling other types of products. There's certain things that you don't sell with a smile and a pat on the back. You got to do it a little bit deeper. So yeah, when I think about trust, I guess I think more about the, are you able to actually deliver the value you promised when at the end of the day?
Interesting. I can imagine you kind of drawing that on a whiteboard or whatever, flip chart, and just this growing and growing and kind of sneaking a look around at the students whose jaws are kind of just dropping more and more and thinking, that's just messy. I imagine you make it messy on purpose and people all over the shop.
Oh, yeah. It's chaotic. Yeah. It's unpredictable. It's as soon as you think you've got the key players pinned down, some dude comes out of left field and you didn't realize that person was a part of the decision process, and you're going to start all over again and do basically all the same 3 months of work you've done for all of the other players. Now you have to jump through those hoops for him. And I guess one of my favorite things, being perhaps a little maybe mean spirit, a jokester, maybe not mean spirited, I don't know. I love the guys. We talked about the people that come in not wanting to go into sales. Well, we also get some of the people coming in whose friends and family have always told them, oh, you're a natural salesperson, you could sell ice to an ice, all these things. And watching them go, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. I can't talk my way out of this. I actually have to provide value. And actually there's one student that comes to mind in particular who just was persistently, he had done a summer internship with a company. So he equated that to like 40 years of experience in the field, and well, at my internship, that, that's not how it worked. Nobody would ever close in one meeting at my internship. So, well, that's one context in a world of, about 100,000 other contexts that exist. There's products you can sell in one call. Even today, even with the complexity, there's people that will close a deal very quickly. Might not be the ideal way to do it, might not be the most secure way to do it. And actually, I'll tell you, speaking on trust, that's another thing. You can communicate a lot about your trustworthiness by the process that you follow when you're selling, right? One of our competitors, when I first started selling insurance, and I didn't know how smart they were. I just knew that they were the other guys, and they weren't as good as us, right? Because they were the other guys. And it turns out they followed a really rigid process that at first I thought they were crazy when I heard it. And now I realized that they were really, really smart. And essentially we were running around trying to get people to close on the spot, high effort, high energy, close them, move forward. And one of the guys I worked with had a just astronomical closing rate, like 70-80% of the people he got in front of would buy from him like that day. But about half of those a month or two later would cancel their direct, their automatic payments and terminate their policy. So he, at the end of the day, he'd wind up with, about what a good close rate is for any insurance guy, 40% in terms of what, 30% probably is more like it, in terms of what actually stuck, right? So his actual closes were much more, down to earth. But anyway, so we were trying to close on the spot, and this company would go in, they do a very detailed kind of needs discovery call. They'd ask a lot of questions. They'd understand the person's financial goals and obligations and what they would be using the insurance for. Big process. And then they would say, okay, we're going to go away for a week. Let's set another meeting. We're going to come back and we're going to propose some options for you. Now, I think that was a little theatrical. They don't, it turns out companies don't completely customize insurance products for individual consumers. They have a couple things that they can combine, so there's maybe a very slight amount of customization, but they go away, they come back, they would not have talked about their product until call number 2. Come back, show the product, relate it back to everything they said in the prior meeting. Again, they're demonstrating, I listened, I took notes, I remember what you said. It was not a one night stand for me, right? I'm back and I'm continuing to invest more time in you. And then maybe this was just, rumor. I like to think it wasn't rumor. I like to think they did this on purpose and that this is true. But we were told that they would leave after that meeting and they would, as a matter of policy, as a matter of procedure, not close the deal and say, hey, this is a big decision. We want you to take at least a week. We'll come back in a week. Of course, we want you to buy. If you want to buy, we're ready, but we're not ready tonight. And allegedly, even if somebody were to have their checkbook out and say, no, this is exactly what I want, I'm ready to buy, they would say, sleep on it, because there's something about this process where if you do it tonight, you're going to have this kind of halo hanging over you, or maybe it's not a halo, maybe it's a storm cloud that says, did that person kind of pull a fast one on me? I think it was the right decision, but it happened really quick, and maybe it's not wise to make big decisions like this really quick. They'd go back and, they'd leave. No, I want to buy. No, we won't let you buy. Come back a third time. And then, if the person is still interested in doing it, they'll close the sale. Now, you think about buyer's remorse, which, I've always been of the position is not a if, it's a when. We all, no matter how wise the decision was, there's some question about the opportunity cost, or hell, even with things that are free, you start wondering, was that the best use of my time? Maybe I could have done something else. And we will get into that buyer's remorse phase, all of us. And having a really rigid process that ensured that, the customer at no point of that process can the customer look back and go, oh man, they really pushed me into that. They were bullying me. They were fast talking me. They said, no, think about how we did this. You might be upset. You might wish you had spent the money somehow differently. I mean, that's always a possibility, but you're never going to be able to look at this process and say, you guys screwed me. And that's pretty powerful. See, there's a lot of things that you can do to communicate trust. I'll tell you. And then that's kind of a big, model of selling example, but there's a lot of little ones as well, right? Like if you tell somebody that you're going to call them back in a week, then you call them back in a week. And when you call them back in a week, you remind them why you're calling them back. You say, hey, Fred, we talked last week. I promised I'd call you back this week. I just wanted to make sure I did that. Okay. You don't be cheesy about it, but you remind them, hey, this is where we've been. This is where we're at now. I told you I made a small promise. I'm fulfilling that small promise because I'm a guy that you can trust,
Interesting. What you just said there with the thing about the process and this being a number of years old, I think you said it was before we went back into education. I think that's actually very current. If somebody's smart enough, they will be able to work out that, it's now, because we could jump into meetings so easily using virtual, rather than go, oh, I've got 1 hour on Zoom, and we know that everybody's going to jump off after an hour. Bang, I'll stop. I've got something else booked. I'm not even going to try and use the whole time. I'll take 45 minutes, ask really good questions, and then I'll come back and I'll present in that. So I can, use that psychology and the stuff you've talked about and come back, giving them that time to think. That is playing into our hands now. It's something that could be taken and repeated very much, I think. And I mean, that's something I'm encouraging people to do, is just think about splitting stuff out, because it's not like I'll jump on a plane or sit for how many hours in the car and go and see people. We can do little and often, and as you say,
costs have reduced. Yeah.
Well, and it's building the trust because you're starting to see people a little bit more and kind of becoming more part of the way that you're interacting with them. So, very interesting. I'll tell you what we do. So, you talked about trust. And I think within that, you have talked a little, around the win-win and understanding everybody's particular wins and making sure that, well, you didn't say, but we kind of make sure that we're getting something out of a deal as well. We're talking about interdependence because there's so many other moving parts and people and all this stuff that's going on.
Absolutely.
Let's have a quick think about the self-disclosure and feedback element, which you have started to touch on anyway, I think, which is, for me, it's about sort of giving information, a little bit of information about yourself, stuff that you might not necessarily do, but also feeding back to the customer potentially about stuff that they are doing that might not be so helpful in what you're trying to achieve. Holding up some home truths to them, if you like. What are your thoughts around that? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, that's well. My brain goes at least two places when you say that, and one is just that you've got people in this world that really believe that any type of self-disclosure or show of vulnerability is a sign of weakness. And I think those people are revealing a sign of weakness in themselves. No, that's not how relationships work. I can be vulnerable with my customers. I can disclose things, I can share what's going on. And if it's truly a trusted relationship, that's exactly what you do. Your most intimate relationships are not ones where you stand there. Well, I hope to God they're not ones where you stand there, arms crossed, pretending like you've got everything under control, even stuff you couldn't possibly have under control.
Power stance.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, we know this in personal relationships, but, business relationships, it turns out, are kind of personal relationships. At the end of the day, they're people interacting with people. So that's one area where my brain goes. The other is, well, let's see if I can remember what the other is while I sip my coffee.
While you sip your coffee, I will just chirp in that people interacting with people, that is precisely what, pretty much what Steve Dent talked about as he was developing PQ, that organizations don't partner, people do.
Absolutely.
You just said that, you paraphrased what he said. There you go. Now that's a lot of coffee. What was the next bit?
Well, just to add on that, there's a whole field of organizational behavior over in academia, and I have taken some pleasure of kind of poking and prodding at them. And I understand, and obviously the term organizational behavior is to imply, the behavior of individuals within organizations. But sometimes when you take a term like that and you start to use it conversationally, people start to get this delusional belief that, organizations make these decisions. No, Kathy at the organization made a decision, but Pfizer did not make a decision. There's no dude there named Pfizer. I don't know. Maybe there is a Mr. Pfizer. I don't know. But so that's a big piece of the puzzle. Man, I sincerely cannot remember what the second one was. So it's self-disclosure. We talked about vulnerability.
And sometimes what I was saying is that the way I see it, and maybe, is that it's sometimes saying to the customer, say, look, you talk about partnering, Mr. Customer, but actually you don't behave like that. You say that we're working together, but actually when push comes to shove, you're not giving anything back to me. I need information to help you, but you arms crossed, don't tell me anything. That's where I think it can sometimes come out where.
Absolutely. Well, we used to do this case study, and I forget which case study it was, with our MBA students. And this was the first time I'd ever done an MBA class. I was actually still a doctoral student, and I was working with another professor, and he had this case picked out. And essentially, it was kind of a key account relationship type of thing, a big, important customer, deep trust, presumably trusting relationship. And I believe it was something about enriched milk that it was perhaps the case was Tetra Pak, that makes the sealed, air-free milk and other types of containers. And they were talking to a company, and the company was, really struggling in their sales. And they said, well, we want to keep working with you. We want to do whatever we can to, even though it's not our job to market your product, obviously we want you to be successful. So we're going to bring whatever resources we have to bear in this situation. And one of the things was that they were not enriching their milk with extra vitamins or something, and the entire market had shifted to enriched milk. And this company said, no, we really want to be homegrown, organic, no, not enriched. That we think that's our kind of the strength of our model. And you get all of these MBA students that are evaluating this, and they say, oh, well, the Tetra Pak guy should stop suggesting that they, reconfigure their product and just sell them what he's supposed to sell them and get on with it. And that may have even been the whole point of the case, to tell you the truth, which I found a little maybe not correct. Okay, maybe that is how they differentiate. But if their sales are going down, you have to be comfortable being in a position. If it's a trusted relationship, then you have earned the right to say certain things to that person. You don't say them rudely. There's never well, I wouldn't say there's never a reason to be a jerk, but there's rarely a reason to be a jerk. So you're going to be tactful and all that, but it's fair to say, Fred, we've been meeting for the last 9 months, and we've been talking about these things, and your sales continue to slump. And I'm not saying this to be hurtful or to like cause more work for you, but it might be time to give some serious thought to reconsidering your product. Because if it were a key differentiator for you, if that was what's driving sales, then why are your sales declining? And why are you having so much trouble? If it was a key differentiator, it would do the exact opposite, right? Your target market, it would resonate with them, and they would buy from you and only you. So I understand the philosophy behind what you're saying, but maybe it's time to try something new. And the facts are not on your side. And I think people who are in trusting relationships get to have those types of conversations. My family gets to tell me things that if some dude in the street told me, might cause some conflict, because I love them and they love me. And, if hey, we all get off the rails sometimes, we all need some feedback and correction. And yeah, I think it's absolutely warranted. And, obviously you need to know that the relationship is strong enough to tolerate that. And I guess you would get feedback on that pretty quickly. If you miscalculated, get the hell out of my office. You haven't earned the right to say that to me. But no, I think it's absolutely fair. And one of the strange things we see is that you take this idea that seems very simple, the win-win idea. And again, it's what I say, you ask questions about it, you give them a little quiz, it's simple, everybody will understand it. And yet you look at their behaviors, and it seems that implicitly they often interpret that to mean the exact opposite of a win-win. And that's not to say they understand that they don't win at the customer's expense, but they don't always understand that the customer doesn't get to win at their expense. You say, well, remember that whole win-win thing? It's like, yeah. Like, well, that wasn't just to protect the customer from you. That was to protect you from the customer. Sometimes they can have unreasonable demands. Sometimes they can, end up taking up more of your resources than they should. And you need to go back and maybe provide them a manual or provide them some training so they stop calling your 800 number, 18 times a day and using up all of your service personnel's time. Yeah, if it's a trusted relationship, these are the types of things you get to do.
I'd say get to. I think you have to. And in itself, it can build and strengthen the relationship. And going back to your man who was, hail, good, hearty fellow is how I sometimes see, a bit of golf, go, a few beers, you'll buy from me, won't you?
That's the guy. That's the guy.
He's not going to say, hey, Mr. Customer, I think you're wrong. Again, you didn't use those words. That'd be too blunt. But then some people you need to be blunt. But
yeah,
you make a bad mistake here. And look, we have got this interdependence. My success is based on yours. So I'm telling you, with vested interest and with all our interests at heart. So yeah, for me, I think that is very much part and parcel of modern selling. That's, if I was a customer, I'd be expecting that. I think. A modern procurement professional would want somebody to be able to tell them that, somebody who got these kind of relationships. I think
absolutely.
And maybe I'm being a bit
looking at,
I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I mean, just looking at how complex things have gotten and how tricky it is to put together a meaningful solution for certain problems. The customer, one of the core elements of value that the salesperson provides to the customer is that expertise and that knowledge. And you're supposed to, as the salesperson, know something that the customer doesn't know. So when they're about to make a dramatic misstep, I think what you said about they don't get to, they almost have to. Yeah, it's not really a right at that point. It's a responsibility. I've actually got a company that I do some training for that I think has a really great position on this, where there's actually two almost sister companies that operate doing the exact same business in different states in the Southeast US. And one of them takes, and they're all, I mean, they're both great companies and they're both seemingly successful. And one of them takes a, you know, let's try to get people in, and then we can kind of nurture those relationships and help change them and help them adapt their businesses. And they basically distribute products to retailers, specialty retailers. And, you know, we can help them learn how to merchandise better. We can help them design their whole store better so that they can, you know, maximize their revenue. We can help them with all sorts of things. And then the other side takes, I think, a somewhat of a bolder stance and says, no, if you don't have certain initial conditions in place, then there's nothing we can do to help you. You know, so if somebody said, well, can I start with a lower order? Can I start, you know, by dipping my toes in? And they'll just consistently tell them, no, not really. If you do not have A, B, and C in place, the likelihood that you'll be successful, you know, there are people that have done it, but the likelihood is so small that we don't feel comfortable selling you the products that fuel your failure. You know, if we're going to work with you, we want you to be a success. And that's I mean, that's a very specific way to talk about it, right? I mean, you're not saying, oh, you're not good enough, or you need to get your shit together. You're saying, without these things in place, we don't have enough evidence to suggest that you'll be successful. So our whole thing is, you win, we win, you know, the employees win, everybody wins. Yeah. And if we can't have a honest expectation that that's going to happen, then we can't really sell you this product in good conscience, you know?
Yeah. We understand how this stuff works. That's why you want to work with us. That's what we do. But we have to give you the best advice. And I think sometimes the other thing is we understand how you need to buy these. Now, sometimes you'll have expert buyers and they get their process. I mean, how often are I don't even know I don't know what to do in my own company to get this purchase through. Another area to potentially add value. But yep. Well, look, we could go on long into the night, I suspect. But
indeed,
you've given us some fantastic food for thought. I'd say not least just understanding a little bit about what happens in universities over there, and then some of your takes on these elements of PQ. So. Perfect. What next for you then? You know, you've got Professor. What happens? Where do you go from now?
Well, I keep telling, the stupid dad joke that I keep telling is, you know, no more Mr. Nice Guy. You know, the gloves are coming off. You know, I've been on my best behavior, and people go, "This is your best behavior?" Oh yeah, you have no idea what's coming.
Can they take those awards away?
They can't. They can't actually. It's a weird system in that I don't know that I like the system. I like the system because there is no alternative where they say we're going to keep you around. You just don't have tenure. You know, the alternative is you're fired, go find somewhere else to work. So I like it that I am not fired, but the idea that you can't get fired is bewildering to me. You know, this is not how the world works. And there are certainly examples. I'll read my list of names of people who abuse this system. No. So it's got some good things, but it's got some bad things. But no, it's funny. Anytime something like this, so this was just announced a few weeks ago that you know, I've been approved for what's called full professor. Now I already have tenure, and they gave me that a few years ago, but now I'm full, which it just means that people don't get to vote on me to be full because I'm already full. That's kind of what it means, and I get to vote on other people when in their P&T decisions. But I feel this kind of very irrational sense of guilt. As soon as they tenured me, I like doubled down. I started working harder than I was before because I felt, oh man, I've really got to show them that this was a good decision. And a similar thing has happened since they announced the full. I'm like, oh man, I got to make sure I've got, I can't be a full professor when I've got so many lingering projects that aren't finished, and I've really got to push these projects through. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm sure that's a good response for the university. I'm not sure that's a functional, healthy response for me, but oh well.
There's some interesting research potentially into why has that started to happen when you achieve that. You're now starting to do even more to
yeah.
No, look, that's fascinating. Look, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. It's great to listen to you. One last question.
Absolutely.
One last cheeky question.
Sure.
Last cheeky question. Favorite Iron Maiden song?
Well,
That's the
It's
hardest question
it's
I've asked
gonna
all day, isn't
depend
it?
on, yeah, well, because they've only got about 30,000 different songs. And it depends on whether it's from the live album or whether it's from a studio album. I think one of my favorite things that they've done is the Live After Death live album. And all of the songs have just they're a little bit faster, they're a little bit more energetic, you know, in the live situation. So in that, I mean, Aces High is hard to argue with. The Trooper is always a fun one. Run to the Hills is would be high up there. Yeah, I'd have to say somewhere in those three. But you know, if I could only pick one song to kind of get somebody to understand who Iron Maiden is, I think it would probably be Aces High, just because the guitar part is so interesting and the vocals are sort of, you know, soaring and atmospheric, I guess.
Brilliant. No, thank you. I'm changing my playlist for this afternoon when I've put some other stuff together.
Well, I'm glad I could make a difference. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Look, thank you so much. And how do people get in touch with you if they wanted to ask you stuff or maybe musical choice?
WillyBolander.com. You can email me at wbolander@fsu.edu. You can, I'm easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm around. You can find me. Yeah. And Fred, I was just going to say, I want to get you on my podcast as well. Oh, you can, thesaleslab.org. Let me make sure that's the right address. Now that I vocalize it, I'm beginning to doubt that, but I want to get you on that. I realize, I want to reciprocate, but I have such a backlog of interviews that I have not done anything with that I'm kind of making sure I get those published before I add any more to the hopper. But I'll be in touch about trying to plug you in on that.
Oh, brilliant. No, I'd love that. That'd be good fun. We can pick up the conversation where we left off because there's plenty more we're going to chat about, I suspect.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks again, Fred.
Excellent. No, thank you. Really appreciate that, buddy. Bye.
Cool.